They called her weak, just a human in a world ruled by wolves. But when the Alpha King's enemies left 13 orphaned pups to die, she stayed. All night. Keeping them alive with nothing but her warmth and will to protect. By dawn, the Alpha found her half-frozen, surrounded by life. That night, a human Luna changed the fate of an entire kingdom. This is the Alpha King's human mate who saved 13 orphaned pups. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from right now? I love seeing where everyone's tuning in from. The storm came without warning. Ilara Quinn pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders as the cold wind howled through the forest. The moon, a pale silver eye above the trees, cast long shadows that danced like spirits across the snow. She had been returning from the healer's cottage, where she'd spent the day tending to injured wolves from a border skirmish. Her boots crunched softly on the path that led back to the Silverfang Palace, the home she now shared with King Kale, her mate, the most feared alpha in the northern lands. Ilara still wasn't used to being called Luna. She was human, after all, a doctor who'd stumbled into a world of teeth, claws, and ancient hierarchies. But Kale had chosen her, and somehow, his pack had learned to accept her. At least, most of them had. The wind shifted. The scent of smoke stung her nose. Then, snap. She froze. Every instinct told her she wasn't alone. Kale, she called softly, half hoping he'd sent guards to escort her home. Only silence answered. Then the world exploded. A rough hand clamped over her mouth. Another grabbed her from behind, dragging her off the path. She struggled, kicking, biting, but a cloth soaked in something chemical pressed against her face. The sharp, burning smell of chloroform filled her lungs. Her vision blurred. The last thing she heard before everything went black was a growling voice. Alpha Ravik sends his regards. When Ilara woke, the air was freezing. Her wrists were bound with plastic ties that bit into her skin, and her head throbbed. It took her a moment to realize she was lying on cold stone. She blinked, her breath forming clouds in front of her face. The walls around her were cracked and ancient ruins of some long-abandoned fortress. A broken arch framed the moonlight spilling through a collapsed ceiling. Snow drifted inside in lazy spirals. She was alone. Ilara tried to move. Pain flared through her wrists, but she twisted them against the edge of a broken stone until the tie began to weaken. Her breath came out in gasps. Don't panic. You've been trained for emergencies. You've gotten out of worse. She lied to herself, but it kept her focused. Finally, the plastic snapped. Her wrists were raw and bleeding, but free. She crawled toward a half-broken wall that blocked most of the wind. There was an old canteen nearby, half-filled with icy water. A message was carved into the wall, crudely etched with claws. One word from your alpha, and you die. Her heart sank. So that was the plan. They'd taken her to use against Kale. She clenched her fists. You'll never break him, she whispered into the cold. Hours passed. The night deepened. She tried to keep her body moving to stay warm. Her thoughts drifted to Kale, his steady eyes, his calm strength. He would come for her. He always kept his word. But as the wind screamed through the ruins, even hope began to feel thin. Then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. At first, it was faint like a breath, or the rustle of fabric. Then again. A soft, trembling whimper. Ilara turned sharply. Hello, she whispered. Is someone there? No answer. Just the wind through the stones. But then came another sound, a higher-pitched cry, small and desperate, echoing from somewhere below her feet. Her pulse quickened. That wasn't the wind. It was a child. She found a cracked stone stairway leading downward, half-collapsed and covered in frost. She hesitated. Kale had warned her never to explore ruins alone, there were creatures that lurked in the shadows. But the cry came again, louder this time. It sounded like pain. Ilara, don't be stupid, she muttered. You're unarmed, freezing, and oh, forget it. She descended, one careful step at a time. The air grew colder as she reached the bottom. The faint light from above barely touched the room, but she could make out movement, tiny shapes huddled together in the corner. Ilara gasped. They weren't human children. They were wolf pups, 13 of them, small, malnourished, their fur matted with dirt and dried blood. They pressed close together, trembling violently. The oldest might have been 10 in human years, the smallest looked barely 3. One lifted his head, a grey pup with piercing golden eyes, and let out a warning growl, so soft it broke her heart. "Oh no," Ilara whispered. "You poor babies." For a long moment, Ilara just stood there, frozen in disbelief. She'd treated wolves before, grown soldiers, beaters, omegas, but never pups. And never enemy pups. The scent on them was unmistakable, Bloodclaw pack. The same pack that had kidnapped her. The same pack Kale had been fighting for months. "What are you doing here?" she murmured, more to herself than to them. "Where are your parents?" The grey pup, clearly the oldest, growled again, stepping in front of the others. His small body trembled, but he stood his ground, eyes locked on her every move. "Hey," Ilara said softly, crouching down. "I'm not going to hurt you, okay? I want to help." He didn't relax. None of them did. They were starving, frightened, and freezing. She could see the rise and fall of their chests, too fast, shallow breaths. Hypothermia. Ilara took a slow breath, forcing her hands to stay visible and calm. "Okay, I'm sitting down," she said quietly, lowering herself to the ground. "See? Not dangerous. Just cold like you." A tiny black pup whimpered and buried its head under the grey one's belly. Ilara's heart twisted. "You've been here a while, haven't you?" She scanned the room. There was no food. No blankets. Nothing but cracked stone and snow. Whoever had left these children hadn't planned for them to survive. Her jaw clenched. "Monsters," she muttered under her breath. How could anyone? A faint shuffle made her look up. The smallest pup was limping toward her, holding one paw awkwardly off the ground. Blood darkened the fur. It let out a weak cry. "Oh, sweetheart," Ilara breathed. She reached out slowly, giving the others time to react. "You're hurt. Can I see?" The grey pup growled but didn't attack. He just watched her, trembling, torn between fear and exhaustion. The little injured one pressed closer, collapsing against Ilara's knee. Okay, she whispered. "Easy now." She tore a strip from her coat lining and examined the wound. It was a gash, deep but clean. She poured a little of her water onto the fabric and began to clean it, murmuring softly as she worked. The pup whimpered, but didn't pull away. "I know, baby, I know. I'm sorry. It's cold, huh? But we've got to stop the bleeding." When she was done, she tied the strip gently around the small leg. "There. That's a start." She looked up at the rest of them. They were still watching, unsure. She smiled weakly. "See? I don't bite." The grey pup's ears flicked. Then, slowly, he nudged one of the smaller pups forward. It was enough. One by one, the pups crawled toward her. Some sniffed her cautiously, others pressed close, seeking warmth. Within minutes, Ilara was buried beneath a pile of shivering fur. She laughed softly, the sound shaky with emotion. "Well, this is cozy." She wrapped her arms around as many as she could reach. The smallest tucked themselves against her chest. The grey one, the protector, settled beside her thigh, still wary but no longer hostile. "You're a brave little guy," she told him. "What's your name, huh?" "Ash." "Yeah, you look like an ash." The grey pup blinked, tilting his head, as if testing the name. She smiled wider. "Ash it is." Hours passed. The temperature dropped further, frost creeping up the walls. Ilara's teeth chattered, but she kept rubbing their fur, whispering softly to keep herself awake. She sang old songs from her childhood, anything to keep the silence from swallowing them. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," she hummed, voice cracking. "How I wonder what you are." A tiny brown pup yawned and pressed its nose against her neck. Another curled under her jacket. The injured one, now asleep, rested on her lap. Her entire body ached, but she didn't dare move. "Kale," she whispered into the darkness. "If you're out there, please find us." By midnight, the cold was brutal. Her hands had gone numb. She flexed her fingers every few minutes, afraid of frostbite. Her breath came out in sharp gasps. The pups were quieter now, their trembling slowing, not a good sign. "No," she murmured. "Don't you dare give up. Stay with me. Come on, babies, stay awake." She rubbed their fur faster, trying to generate heat. Her own vision began to blur from exhaustion. Somewhere in the haze between sleep and waking, she thought she heard footsteps above. Her head snapped up. "Kale." No answer, just wind and snow falling through the cracks. But then, a howl. Long, powerful. Familiar. Her heart leaped. "Kale," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. The pups stirred, some whining softly. The grey one lifted his head, ears pricking toward the sound. He let out a faint answering howl, weak but determined. "That's it," Ilara said, voice trembling. "Tell them where we are." Another howl came, closer this time. Boots crunched above. Voices. "Ilara, check the lower levels." Her whole body shook with relief. "We're here," she tried to shout, but her voice was hoarse. "Kale. Down here." The stairway filled with light, a torch, then several. And then she saw him. Kale. Broad shoulders. Silver eyes shining in the dim light. Snow clung to his dark hair, and his expression, when he saw her, broke. "Ilara," he breathed, stepping down the last few stairs. "Moon above." He froze when he saw what surrounded her, 13 small pups nestled against her like a living blanket. For a long moment, no one spoke. The warriors behind him shifted uneasily. "Alpha," one said tensely. "Those are Bloodclaw pups." Ilara's arms tightened instinctively. "They're children," she rasped. They were dying. Kale's eyes met hers. He crouched, reaching out to touch her cheek, his hand warm against her frozen skin. "You're shaking," he murmured. "You kept them alive all night?" She nodded weakly. "I couldn't leave them." One of his lieutenants growled under his breath. "They're enemy spawn. We can't take them in." Kale's voice dropped to a growl that silenced everyone. "They're pups." The authority in his tone rolled through the air like thunder. "They come with us. Anyone who disagrees can challenge me." The warriors fell silent. Kale wrapped his cloak around Ilara, pulling her gently to her feet. "You're safe now," he whispered. "I've got you." She sagged against him, her legs trembling. Don't leave them behind." His lips brushed her hair. "Never." He turned to his men. "Carry the pups. Carefully." As they gathered the small bodies in blankets, one of the warriors tried to lift Ash. The grey pup snarled, refusing to be separated from Ilara. Kale chuckled softly. "Stubborn one, isn't he?" "He's brave," Ilara murmured. "He protected them." Kale crouched, holding out a hand to the pup. "It's okay, little warrior. I'll protect her now." Ash sniffed his hand, then, with a reluctant whine, allowed himself to be picked up. Kale gave him a small nod of respect before straightening. "Let's go home," he said. As they climbed out of the ruins, the dawn finally broke, soft golden light spilling over the horizon. Ilara looked back one last time at the crumbling crypt where she had spent the longest night of her life. 13 small lives had survived because she'd chosen to stay. Kale's arms tightened around her as he whispered in her ear, "You're the bravest Luna I've ever known." And for the first time since her abduction, Ilara allowed herself to believe they might all survive this war, not with strength, but with compassion. The ride back to Silverfang territory was a blur of cold wind, torchlight, and heartbeats. Ilara drifted in and out of consciousness in Kale's arms. Every time she stirred, she felt the warmth of his chest and the steady rhythm of his heart. It was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. "Stay with me, Ilara," Kale murmured into her hair. "We're almost home." "I'm fine," she whispered, though her voice trembled and her lips were blue. He didn't believe her, not for a second. His arms tightened around her. Behind them, his warriors carried bundles of blankets, inside each, a sleeping pup. Even the fiercest soldiers of the Silverfang pack walked slower, gentler, afraid to jostle the fragile lives they carried. Snow fell in lazy spirals, dusting Kale's dark hair and Ilara's coat. The night was quiet except for the soft whimpers of the pups and the crunch of boots through snow. When they reached the border, Kale howled a deep, resonant sound that made the trees tremble. The sentries guarding the gates responded instantly, lowering the barriers. Word spread like wildfire through the Packlands: the Alpha King has returned, and he carries the missing Luna. The great hall blazed with torchlight when they arrived. Pack members gathered in silence as Kale carried Ilara inside. Their eyes widened when they saw what came next: the 13 pups wrapped in thick furs, trembling and whimpering, too weak to stand. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Those are blood-claw markings," someone hissed. "Enemy pups. Why would he bring them here?" Kale ignored the whispers. His only focus was Ilara. He carried her straight to the healer's wing. Dr. Myra, an older wolf with kind eyes, rushed forward, bowing low. "Alpha. Luna. She's freezing," Kale said urgently. "And there are 13 pups that need warmth, food, and medical care now." Myra's eyes widened. 13. Bloodclaw or not, they're children, Kale growled. "You'll treat them as such." "Yes, Alpha." She snapped orders to her assistants, and they hurried to prepare beds, blankets, and broth. Ilara tried to protest, but her voice was weak. "Kale, the pups first. They're being taken care of," he assured her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You've done enough for one night." She shook her head faintly. "I haven't done anything. I just couldn't leave them." Kale's voice softened. "You saved them, Ilara. That's more than most warriors would have done." Her eyes fluttered shut as warmth finally began to return to her limbs. The last thing she heard before sleep claimed her was Kale's voice, low and full of something she'd never heard before: fear and love mixed together. "Rest, my heart. I'm here." Ilara woke hours later to the sound of gentle voices and soft whimpers. She blinked, disoriented, until she realized she was lying in a warm bed in the healer's ward. A fire crackled in the hearth. Her wrists were bandaged. And beside her bed, curled up in a small ball, was Kale, fast asleep in a chair. He looked utterly exhausted. Dark circles framed his silver eyes, and his usually perfect posture had given way to a slumped, protective sprawl, his hand still wrapped around hers even in sleep. A movement caught her eye. Across the room, on a row of low cots, the pups lay nestled together under blankets. The healers moved quietly among them, checking wounds, offering bowls of warm broth. The grey pup Ash was awake, watching everything with sharp, suspicious eyes. When he noticed her stirring, his ears twitched. He didn't move toward her, but his gaze softened ever so slightly. "Hey," Ilara whispered. Her voice was rough, but steady. "You made it." Kale stirred at her voice. His head shot up instantly, eyes snapping open. Relief flooded his face. "Ilara," he breathed. "Moon above, I thought." He stopped, his jaw tightening as he swallowed the words. "How do you feel?" "Tired. But warm," she said, smiling faintly. "How long have you been sitting there?" "Since we got back." "You didn't sleep." "I did," he lied, "badly." She laughed weakly. "You're terrible at lying." Kale sighed, brushing his thumb across her knuckles. "I wasn't sure you'd wake up." "I couldn't." He paused, searching for words, but his voice broke. "You scared me." Her heart twisted. Kale, the unshakable Alpha King who commanded hundreds, looked utterly undone. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." He shook his head. "You don't ever apologize for surviving." They sat in silence for a moment, the fire's crackle the only sound between them. Then Ilara's eyes drifted back to the pups. "They're still here." Kale followed her gaze. "Yes. And that's going to cause trouble." Later that morning, the Silverfang Council gathered in the war room, a semicircle of stone and firelight. The councillors bowed as Kale entered, but their expressions were tense. Councillor Theran, a tall, grey-haired wolf, spoke first. "Alpha, forgive my bluntness, but bringing Bloodclaw offspring into our territory is madness." "They're not soldiers," Kale replied, his voice calm but dangerous. "They're children." "They're enemy children," Theran countered. "Their blood carries their pack's allegiance. You risk our safety, our future, for sentiment." Kale's eyes narrowed. "I risk nothing that wasn't already broken by this war." Another councillor, a woman named Lyra, folded her arms. What of the Luna? She's human. She doesn't understand the danger. Compassion is admirable, but not when it endangers us all. The room fell silent. Then Kale's tone shifted, quiet, deadly. You think compassion is weakness? Lyra flinched. No, Alpha, because my Luna kept 13 orphans alive through a night that would have killed full-grown wolves. That isn't weakness. That's strength. No one dared respond. Kale's gaze swept the room. They stay under my protection. Anyone who harms or mistreats them will answer to me personally. His alpha power rolled through the air like a storm. The council bowed their heads, unable to resist. The decision was made. But Kale knew this was only the beginning. That evening, Ilara insisted on seeing the pups again. She leaned on Kale's arm as they entered the nursery. The moment the door opened, chaos met them, tiny bodies tumbling, growling, whimpering, playing. The room smelled of milk and pine. Blankets were scattered everywhere. Ash, the grey pup, was still the most cautious. He sat near the window, alert as ever. When he saw Ilara, he stood up quickly, tail twitching. The others froze, then broke into happy whines. They rushed toward her in a furry wave. Oh! Ilara laughed, kneeling carefully as they surrounded her. Tiny paws pressed against her legs. The smallest pup, black with a white patch, licked her hand. Kale leaned against the doorframe, watching with quiet amusement. You have an army now. They're children, she said softly, stroking one of the pups. They just need safety. Ash approached slowly, eyes never leaving Kale. He doesn't trust me, Kale murmured. He's protective, Ilara said. Like someone else I know. Kale arched a brow. Flattery won't make me share you with 13 new dependents. She smiled. I wasn't asking for permission. He chuckled, a low sound that warmed her chest. You're impossible. Good, she said, glancing at him over her shoulder. Otherwise, you'd get bored. By the next morning, rumors had spread through the entire kingdom. Some pack members were amazed by the Luna's bravery, others whispered that she was too soft, too human, too trusting. When Kale led her into the great hall for breakfast, every conversation stopped. Hundreds of wolves, warriors, hunters, beaters turned to stare. And at Ilara's heels trotted a small parade of pups. 13 of them, following her in a crooked line, each wearing a scrap of red cloth tied around their necks so the staff could tell them apart. A murmur swept through the hall. Some smiled. Others glared. Kale's beater, Darius, met them halfway, his expression torn between amusement and disbelief. Alpha. Luna. I take it this is the new, pack edition? You could say that, Kale replied evenly. Darius crouched to look at the pups. One, the smallest, growled at him. Darius raised an eyebrow. Feisty. I like it. Ilara smiled faintly. That's Ember. She's not afraid of anyone. Darius straightened. They seem healthy enough now. You've done well. She did, Kale said, glancing at his mate. I just carried them home. Ilara looked away shyly, but her eyes shone with quiet pride. Later that day, as the pups played in the courtyard, a messenger arrived at the gates, blooded, breathless, and trembling. Alpha Kale, he gasped. Alpha Ravik is coming. With warriors. He demands audience. Kale's expression hardened. How many? 24, maybe more. They're armed. Ilara's stomach dropped. He's coming for them. Kale looked at her. Then he'll learn what happens when you threaten what's mine. By dusk, the tension in the Silverfang stronghold was thick enough to taste. The courtyard filled with guards. Ilara stood beside Kale as the massive gates creaked open. Alpha Ravik entered first, tall, scarred, and radiating menace. His fur-lined cloak dragged behind him, stained from travel. His golden eyes swept the courtyard until they found the pups clustered near Ilara's skirts. He sneered. You've got to be joking. Kale's voice was calm but laced with danger. You left them to die. I left them hidden until I could retrieve them, Ravik snapped. You had no right. They were starving, Ilara interrupted, stepping forward. Freezing. One had a wounded leg. You call that hidden? Ravik's gaze turned on her, sharp and disdainful. The human mate. I should have guessed. You don't understand pack law. I understand enough to know you don't leave children to die, she said, her voice trembling but strong. Whatever your war is with Kale, they didn't choose it. He took a threatening step closer. Kale moved instantly, a blur of motion, placing himself between them. His voice dropped to a growl that vibrated through the air. One more step toward her, and I'll tear your throat out. Ravik stopped, eyes narrowing. So this is what the great Alpha King has become, tamed by a human. Kale smiled, cold and sharp. No. Changed by one. Ravik barked a laugh. You think keeping my pack's orphans makes you noble? You're meddling in things you don't understand. I understand enough, Kale said. They're not yours anymore. They are Bloodclaw. Ravik roared. Their blood belongs to me. A small voice cut through the silence. No, it doesn't. Everyone turned. Ash stood at the front of the group of pups, trembling but defiant. His golden eyes burned with something far older than his years. You left us, he said, his voice cracking but steady. You told us to hide, and you never came back. We waited. Marcus cried until he couldn't anymore. Ember stopped moving. We almost died. Ravik stared at him, speechless. Ilara's heart pounded. Kale said nothing, just watched the boy with fierce pride. Ash took another step forward. She saved us. The human. She stayed when she could have run. She's our family now. Silence. The only sound was the wind through the courtyard. Ravik's face hardened, but for the first time, guilt flickered behind his eyes. He looked at Kale. You'd fight me over them? Kale didn't hesitate. I'd fight the world if I had to. For a long moment, the two alphas locked eyes, one ruled by power, the other by purpose. Then Ravik exhaled sharply, his shoulders sinking. Keep them, he said at last. They've made their choice. He turned to Ash. Your father was a warrior, boy. He died believing in our pack. Don't let hate consume you the way it did me. Ash said nothing. He just stepped back beside Ilara, pressing against her leg. Ravik gave Kale one final look. This changes nothing between our packs. Perhaps it changes everything, Kale replied softly. Without another word, Ravik turned and strode away. His warriors followed, disappearing into the snow. The moment the gates closed, Ilara's knees gave out. Kale caught her before she fell. The pups swarmed around them, crying and chattering, relief washing over them like a wave. You did it, Kale whispered against her hair. You magnificent, stubborn woman, you actually did it. Ilara laughed weakly through tears. We did it. He smiled down at her, pride and love blazing in his eyes. Yes. Together. Above them, the moon broke through the clouds, bathing the courtyard in silver light. Around them, 13 small voices rose in laughter, the sound of a future that might finally be free from war. And for the first time in a long time, the Alpha King and his Luna dared to believe they had changed fate itself. The morning after Ravik's retreat, the Silver Fang territory buzzed like a hive split open. The news had spread faster than wildfire. The Alpha King defied war law. The human Luna defied the council. The enemy pups are still alive and living under the royal roof. From the tower windows, Ilara could see wolves gathering in clusters across the training fields. Some spoke in low tones, others shouted openly. She could sense their confusion and anger even through the thick glass. Her heart clenched. She never meant to divide Kale's kingdom. She only wanted to save lives. Kale entered quietly, still damp from an early patrol. His hair dripped onto his collar, his silver eyes dark with fatigue. But when he saw her standing there barefoot, staring out into the tense courtyard, his features softened. You've been up since dawn, he said gently. I couldn't sleep, Ilara admitted. They're angry, aren't they? They're scared, Kale corrected. Fear makes wolves cruel. He came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. But they'll adjust. Ilara leaned back against his chest. You sound so sure. I have to be, he murmured. An alpha who doubts himself invites rebellion. But between you and me, he kissed her temple. I'm terrified too. That honesty made her love him more. Kale, the strongest alpha in the north, was human enough to admit fear. A soft knock came at the door. Beta Darius stepped inside, bowing slightly. Alpha, the council requests audience. Kale's arms tightened around her. Let me guess, they want to talk about the pups. Yes, Darius said grimly. And about the Luna. Ilara's breath caught. Me. They believe your presence has influenced the Alpha's judgment, Darius said carefully. Influenced, Kale repeated, his tone cold as steel. As if compassion is a sickness she gave me. Darius didn't respond. He didn't have to. Everyone knew what the council thought. A human Luna was an experiment, a distraction. And now she had brought enemy blood into their home. Kale took Ilara's hand. Come with me. What? No. I won't discuss you behind closed doors, he said. If they want to question my mate, they'll do it to her face. The council chamber was already filled when they arrived. 10 elders sat in a semicircle, each draped in heavy robes lined with fur. The scent of incense filled the air. When Ilara entered at Kale's side, conversation stopped. The Ran, the oldest counselor, rose first. His tone was calm, but sharp. Alpha Kale. Luna Ilara. Thank you for coming. Kale gave a curt nod. Get on with it. The Ran folded his hands. You have done what no Alpha before you has dared. You brought enemy offspring into our lands, defying both law and tradition. The council demands to know, what is your plan? Kale's jaw flexed. To raise them. Raise them? Lyra, the only female elder, leaned forward. As what? Pets. Symbols of mercy. Those pups carry bloodclaw scent. Their loyalties may not lie with Silver Fang. Ilara took a slow breath, forcing herself to stay calm. They're children, she said softly. They don't have loyalties. They barely have shoes. Several wolves shifted uncomfortably. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like wind through snow. The Ran frowned. With respect, Luna, you are not one of us. You don't understand. Then explain it, she interrupted. Explain why leaving children to die makes you better than the pack you hate. Gasps rippled through the room. Kale's eyes gleamed with pride, though his expression remained unreadable. The Ran cleared his throat. War requires difficult choices. So does peace, Ilara said. But peace keeps more people alive. Lyra slammed her hand against the table. You're a healer, not an alpha. Kale stepped forward, voice low and deadly. She is my Luna. Her words carry my authority. The room fell silent. Ilara's heart pounded. Kale's loyalty was a shield around her, but it also painted a target on her back. The Ran finally exhaled. If you insist on keeping them, Alpha, the council will hold you accountable for their behavior. Should even one of those pups cause harm, you'll face judgment under the laws you swore to uphold. Kale's smile was ice. Then I'll uphold them. But until that day comes, they're under my protection and hers. He turned on his heel, pulling Ilara gently with him. The heavy doors shut behind them with a thunderous echo. In the hallway, Ilara finally let out a shaky breath. That went well. Kale smirked faintly. No one died. I'll take that as a victory. She tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. They hate me. They'll get over it, Kale said, but his eyes told another story. That evening, Ilara sat by the nursery fire, reading softly from a storybook she'd found in the library. The pups were sprawled across the floor, full from dinner. Ember, the smallest, had her head on Ilara's lap, snoring lightly. And so the wolf looked up at the moon, Ilara read, and promised to guard it forever, because love means staying even when it's hard. Ash looked up from his corner. That's dumb, he said quietly. You can't guard the moon. Ilara smiled. Maybe not. But you can try. Ash frowned. What if the moon doesn't want to be guarded? Then, Ilara said gently, you guard it anyway, until it feels safe again. Ash blinked, thoughtful. He didn't reply, but when she closed the book, he moved closer and curled up near her feet. Kale watched from the doorway. Something inside him softened at the sight. His Luna, sitting cross-legged in front of the fire, surrounded by pups who had once been enemies, her hair glowing in the light, her eyes heavy with warmth. He realized then what power truly was. Not strength or fear, but love strong enough to stop a war. The next morning brought grey skies and drizzle. Cale stood on the balcony, staring across the valley. For the first time in years, he saw no smoke rising from the borders. No scouts running with reports of battle. Just silence. Peace, fragile, uncertain, but real. Ilara joined him, a mug of steaming tea in her hands. She wore one of his cloaks, far too large, and the sight made him smile. Darius says the borders are quiet, she said. They're quiet because Ravik's licking his wounds, Cale replied. He won't strike again so soon. Then we have time, she said softly. Time to fix what's broken. Cale turned toward her. You really believe it can be fixed? I have to, she said. If I stop believing, I'll start hating. And hate doesn't heal anyone. He stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head with a small laugh. You're incredible. Hardly, she said. Just stubborn. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Do you know what you looked like when I found you in those ruins? Half dead, I imagine. Half angel, he corrected softly. You were sitting there with frost in your hair, surrounded by 13 pups like a shield. I thought I'd found a ghost. Her heart tightened. You found a fool. I found my Luna, he said simply. The rain softened, turning to mist. For a moment, they stood in silence, the world hushed around them. Cale finally spoke again, voice low. When you were gone, I tore the territory apart looking for you. Every scent trail, every whisper. I barely slept. I kept thinking, what if I never get the chance to tell her? Tell me what? Ilara asked. Cale met her gaze. The silver in his eyes gleamed with raw emotion. That I love you. The words hit her like a heartbeat. Simple. Undeniable. True. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then tears filled her eyes, and she laughed softly. You're terrible at timing. He smiled faintly. You're alive. I'll take that timing. She reached up, cupping his jaw. I love you too, Cale. Even when you're stubborn and overprotective and think glaring solves everything. He chuckled, leaning into her touch. It works on most people. Not me, she said. No, he murmured. That's why I love you. He kissed her then, slow, deliberate, as if memorizing the shape of her soul. The bond between them hummed, a golden thread connecting heart to heart. When they finally pulled apart, the rain had stopped, and the world felt clean again. Later that day, Ilara visited the Pups training yard. Cale had assigned 2 gentle warriors to begin teaching them basic coordination exercises. It wasn't combat, just movement, teamwork, trust. Ash stood in front, leading by silent example. Ilara watched with quiet pride as he helped the younger ones learn balance, never raising his voice, never walking away. His leadership reminded her of Cale, fierce but patient. Cale appeared beside her, arms crossed, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He's got the look. What look? The I'll protect everyone or die trying look, Cale said. Reminds me of someone I know. Ilara elbowed him playfully. Maybe he'll grow out of it. Doubt it, Cale replied. That kind of heart doesn't fade. They stood together, watching the pups tumble and play until laughter replaced fear. For the first time since the war began, Ilara felt peace wrap around her like a blanket. That night, the great hall was quieter than usual. Most of the pack had retired early after a long day of training and patrols. Cale sat by the fire, sharpening his blade, a habit he'd never shaken, even in times of calm. Ilara entered quietly, drying her hair with a towel. You're brooding, she said. I'm thinking, he corrected. Brooding, she repeated with a grin, sitting beside him. He smirked. You're getting bolder. You made me Luna. That comes with privileges. He set the blade down and turned to face her fully. It also comes with risk. The pack will follow you because they follow me. But not everyone is ready to accept a human Luna. If they see any weakness, they'll test you. I don't want to be their alpha, Ilara said. Just their healer. He shook his head. You already are more than that. You healed the heart of this pack. Mine included. Her throat tightened. Kale. He took her hands in his, gaze steady. I need you to know something. Everything I've built, every battle, every victory, it meant nothing until you came. You reminded me why we fight. Why we protect. You made me remember what kind of alpha I want to be. She blinked back tears. You always knew. No, he said softly. I only knew war. You taught me peace. She smiled, brushing his cheek. Then let's hold on to it, Kale. For them. For us. He leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers. For us. The door creaked open, and a small voice piped up. Mama. Ilara turned. Ember stood there in her nightshirt, rubbing her eyes. I had a bad dream, she whispered. Ilara's heart melted. Come here, sweetheart. The pup shuffled forward, climbing into Ilara's lap. Kale smiled, tucking the blanket around them both. What was the dream about? Ilara asked. Ember yawned. Bad wolves. They said they'd take you away again. Ilara's arms tightened around her. No one's taking me anywhere. You're safe, Ember. All of you are safe. The little girl's eyelids drooped. Promise. I promise, Ilara whispered. Kale rested his hand on both their heads, his voice quiet. And an alpha never breaks a Luna's promise. Within minutes, Ember was asleep, her small breaths even and peaceful. Ilara looked down at her, then up at Kale. She called me Mama, she said softly. He smiled. She's not wrong. A lump rose in her throat. I don't know how to be one. Kale reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. You already are. Later, when Ember was tucked back into bed, Kale and Ilara stood in the doorway of the nursery, watching the sleeping pups. The moonlight spilled over them like a blessing. Look at them, Ilara whispered. All those tiny hearts. Kale wrapped an arm around her. You saved them. They saved me, she said. He kissed the top of her head. Then maybe you both saved each other. The firelight flickered, casting their shadows across the walls, the Alpha King and his human Luna, standing guard over 13 sleeping lives. Outside, the storm that had haunted their world for years finally began to clear, leaving behind a fragile but beautiful calm. And for the first time, neither of them felt alone. The days that followed were calm on the surface, but underneath, a quiet storm brewed within Silverfang's walls. The rescued pups had become the heart of the kingdom, their laughter echoing through halls that once knew only war meetings and training drills. Yet with every smile they brought, whispers deepened in the shadows. Some wolves adored the Luna's kindness, calling her a blessing from the moon goddess herself. Others called her cursed, saying her human blood weakened the Alpha King's judgment. And among the latter, resentment festered. Ilara felt it every time she stepped into the great hall, eyes that lingered too long, conversations that stopped when she entered. But she refused to let fear rule her. She smiled, greeted everyone, and poured her energy into healing and caring for the pups. That morning, she was teaching Ash and Ember how to read. They sat by the window, the warm glow of sunrise spilling across the wooden floor. See this one, she said, tracing a finger over the page. It's the letter M. For moon. Ash squinted. Like the moon goddess? Ilara nodded. Exactly. Ember tilted her head. Do you think she watches us? Ilara smiled softly. Always. Especially the brave ones. Ash's lips curved in a tiny, shy smile before he hid behind the book. You say that about everything. That's because bravery hides in everything, Ilara teased. Even in reading your first word. Kale appeared in the doorway, watching silently. The sight of them, the pups sprawled in sunlight, his Luna's hair catching gold, made something in him ache with quiet awe. He'd fought for years believing power was everything. Now he saw power in the smallest things, a child learning letters, a human woman bringing peace to wolves. You're early, Ilara said, noticing him. He leaned against the frame. Couldn't sleep. Darius brought reports from the northern borders. Her smile faded. Trouble? Not yet, Kale said. But some of our patrols are missing food rations and weapons. Someone's been stealing. Ilara frowned. From us? Yes. His gaze hardened. And I think it's someone inside. Ash looked up sharply. Who would do that? Kale's voice softened. Someone who forgot what loyalty means. That afternoon, Kale convened a private meeting with Darius and 2 trusted scouts. Maps covered the table, marked with symbols and red ink. Darius pointed to the western edge of their lands. The thefts began near the supply outpost here, he said. Then spread toward the inner villages. Whoever's behind this knows our routines. Kale's jaw tightened. Then it's one of ours. Darius hesitated. Or several. Some soldiers have been talking about the Luna, the Pups. They think you've gone soft. Kale's hand curled into a fist. If strength means killing children, then yes, I'm soft. Darius gave a small, grim smile. That's what I told them. But talk spreads fast. Kale's eyes flashed silver. Let it. Anyone who questions my leadership can face me directly. Still, Darius's tone was cautious. You can't fight whispers, Kale. You can only drown them with truth or blood. The Alpha's silence said he hadn't yet decided which path he'd take. That night, Ilara woke to faint noises in the courtyard. She slipped from bed, wrapping herself in a cloak. Kale was gone, summoned by a late patrol alert, perhaps, but something felt off. The air carried tension, a sharp scent of smoke and iron. As she moved closer to the nursery, she froze. 2 shadows darted near the door, wolves, moving fast and quiet. One whispered, "Get them and go. The Alpha can't protect them forever." The Pups. Ilara's pulse spiked. She didn't think, she ran. The door burst open with a crash, startling the intruders. They turned, snarling, but Ilara was already there, grabbing a nearby lantern. "Don't you dare touch them." The Pups woke with frightened cries. Ash leapt from his bed, placing himself between the attackers and the others. "Leave us alone." One of the wolves lunged, but Ilara swung the lantern hard. It shattered against his arm, flames licking up his sleeve. He howled, staggering back. The other wolf cursed, grabbing Ember by the wrist. "You should have stayed out of this, human. Let her go." Ilara screamed. Before the attacker could move, a deep snarl filled the room. Kale. He moved like lightning, fur rippling, eyes blazing silver. He seized the wolf by the throat and slammed him into the wall so hard the stone cracked. The other tried to run, but Darius appeared behind him, blade drawn. Within seconds, it was over. Both wolves lay subdued, snarling weakly. Kale turned, breathing hard, his chest rising and falling with fury. "Are you hurt?" Ilara shook her head, trembling. "I'm fine. But they." He was already checking the Pups, kneeling beside them as they huddled close. Ash looked shaken but defiant. "They tried to take Ember." Kale's expression darkened. "Not anymore." Darius stepped forward, binding the traitor's wrists. "They were ours," he said grimly. "Soldiers from the Eastern Patrol." Kale's voice was ice. "Then they'll face Silverfang justice." By dawn, the entire pack knew what had happened. The traitors were dragged to the courtyard, heads bowed, their betrayal exposed for all to see. The air crackled with tension as hundreds of wolves gathered to witness. Kale stood before them, his presence radiating power. "These men betrayed not only their Alpha," he said, voice ringing out, "but every oath the moon goddess holds sacred." One of the captured wolves spat, "We only did what you were too blind to do, cleanse our pack of weakness." A growl rippled through the crowd. Kale's eyes glowed. "You call mercy weakness? You call my Luna's compassion a flaw? She's not one of us," the wolf snarled. "She's human." Kale's voice dropped to a deadly calm. "And yet she has more courage than you." He didn't raise his hand. He didn't need to. The judgment was clear. The council decreed exile, worse than death for a wolf stripped of pack and rank. The traitors were cast beyond the borders, their marks burned away, their howls fading into the morning mist. Ilara stood beside Kale through it all, her hand trembling in his. She hated violence, but she understood this was necessary. When it was done, she whispered, "You did what you had to." Kale looked at her, his expression unreadable. "No. I did what they forced me to. And I'll do worse if anyone touches you or the Pups again." That evening, the pack gathered in uneasy silence. Ilara joined the healers in tending to the shaken children. Ember refused to let go of her hand. "Will they come back?" she asked, voice small. "No," Ilara said softly. "They can't hurt you anymore." Ash sat apart, staring into the fire. He didn't cry, but his jaw was clenched tight. "They hated us because of who we were." Ilara knelt beside him. "They were wrong, Ash. Hate only belongs to the lost." He looked up at her, eyes glistening. "Then what are we?" She smiled sadly. "Found." A week later, Silverfang prepared for the annual Moon Festival, a night when wolves honored their ancestors and renewed pack bonds under the full moon. For years, the celebration had been overshadowed by war. But this year felt different. The courtyards were strung with silver lanterns. Music drifted from the training grounds. Even the pups, dressed in tiny robes, buzzed with excitement. Ilara stood before the mirror, adjusting the white gown Kale had given her. It shimmered like moonlight, embroidered with silver threads shaped like wolf fangs. When Kale entered, she turned, smiling shyly. "You're staring," she teased. He smiled, slow and reverent. "Because you're impossible not to." Her cheeks flushed. "You're not bad yourself." He wore ceremonial armor, black with silver accents, a cloak clasped with the royal insignia. His presence filled the room. "Are you ready?" "As I'll ever be," she said. He took her hand. "Then let's remind them what unity looks like." The entire pack gathered beneath the open sky. The full moon hung high, bathing the clearing in pale light. Wolves shifted into human form, forming a great circle around the Alpha and his Luna. Kale stepped forward, his voice carrying across the crowd. "For years, we've lived in war. We've buried brothers, lost mothers, and forgotten what peace sounds like. But tonight, look around you. We are still here." A murmur of agreement spread. He continued, "Some say mercy makes us weak. I say mercy makes us strong enough to break the cycle." He reached for Ilara's hand. "This Luna, my mate, showed me that strength is not in blood spilled, but in lives saved. And because of her, 13 souls live among us tonight. 13 children who carry the mark of hope." Gasps rippled through the crowd as the pups were brought forward, each holding a lantern. They looked nervous, but Ash led bravely, chin high. Together, they set their lanterns afloat on the lake. The silver lights drifted out, reflecting the moon above. Ilara felt tears sting her eyes. Kale looked at her, smiling faintly. "You've changed them." "We changed them," she corrected. Then, from the back of the crowd, a voice shouted, "All hail the Alpha and his Luna." The chant spread like wildfire until the whole pack echoed it, howls rising to the stars. Kale's chest swelled with pride and something deeper, relief. For the first time, there was no fear in their voices, only unity. Later, when the music began and fires burned bright, Ilara stood by the lakeside, watching the lanterns drift away. The pups played nearby, chasing fireflies, laughing freely. For the first time since she'd arrived in this world, she felt like she belonged. Kale approached quietly, wrapping his cloak around her shoulders. "Cold." "A little," she admitted. "But happy." He kissed her forehead. "Then my kingdom has everything it needs." They stood together, watching the reflection of the moon ripple across the lake. For once, there was no war to plan, no danger to anticipate, just peace. But Kale's eyes lingered on the horizon, his instincts restless. "Something's coming," he murmured. Ilara frowned. "You mean Ravik?" "Maybe," Kale said. "Or maybe fate's just testing us again." She squeezed his hand. "Then we'll face it together." He nodded, eyes gleaming silver under the moonlight. "Always." As the night wore on, the pack danced and sang, the air thick with the scent of roasted meat and pine smoke. The pups fell asleep by the fire, curled up together like tiny stars scattered across the ground. Kale looked at them, then at Ilara. "You gave them a home." She smiled softly. "And you gave me one." He exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Then maybe we've both been found." Under the endless silver sky, surrounded by laughter, hope, and the warmth of family, the Alpha King and his human Luna finally allowed themselves to believe, just for one night, that peace could last. Peace never lasts long in a kingdom built on war. It began one quiet morning, when the frost was still melting from the castle roofs. Kale stood on the balcony overlooking the training yard, watching his warriors spar under Darius's command. The pups were nearby, tumbling through their own mock battles under Ilara's amused supervision. The sight warmed his heart until a messenger burst through the gates, breathless and bloodstained. "Alpha Kale," he gasped, falling to one knee. "Urgent word from the southern border." Kale's calm expression hardened. "Speak." The soldier's voice trembled. "Alpha Ravik's banner has been sighted. He's marching with a new army, stronger than before. He's allied with the Ironcrest rogues." A low growl vibrated through the courtyard. Darius swore under his breath. "Ironcrest. Those beasts will fight for anyone with enough blood on their hands." Kale's eyes burned with silver fire. "How far?" 2 days' march, my lord." Ilara's heart stopped. 2 days. But, the pups. Kale turned to her, his voice steady but grim. "They'll be protected. You have my word." The pups sensed the tension. Ash stepped closer to Ilara, his small face hardening. "He's coming for us, isn't he?" Ilara hesitated, then knelt in front of him. "He's coming for power, not you. But no matter what happens, we'll keep you safe." Kale placed a hand on Ash's shoulder. "You have my promise, little warrior." Ash looked up at him with fierce trust. "Then I'm not scared." Kale's throat tightened. He wished he could borrow even half that courage. That night, Silverfang buzzed with preparations. Armor was polished, blades sharpened, and old battle songs hummed under breath. But not everyone was preparing for war, some were preparing for survival. Ilara gathered the pups in the nursery, packing small bags of food and blankets. Darius appeared at the doorway, his face grave. "Luna, the Alphas ordered you to stay in the inner stronghold. It's the safest place." Ilara looked up. "And what about you?" "I'll be on the front lines where I belong," he said. "Kale's already out there rallying the warriors." Ember clutched Ilara's sleeve. "You're not leaving us, right?" Ilara smiled, though her hands trembled. "Never." The pups looked to her for comfort, and she gave it with a strength she didn't feel. When they finally settled down to sleep, Ilara sat by the window, watching the moon rise. Its pale light seemed thinner tonight, almost hesitant. A quiet knock broke the silence. Kale stepped in, his armor gleaming like liquid night. He looked powerful, every inch the Alpha King. But when his eyes met hers, all she saw was the man she loved. "I should have known you wouldn't be resting," he murmured. "How can I?" she said softly. "You're marching into danger." He crossed the room and knelt beside her chair. "It's what I was born to do." "And what if you don't come back?" Kale took her hand and pressed it to his heart. "Then this will keep beating for you, wherever I end up." Tears welled in her eyes. "That's not funny." He smiled faintly. "It wasn't meant to be." For a long moment, neither spoke. The quiet between them was heavy, full of everything they couldn't say. Then Kale leaned forward, pressing his forehead against hers. "Promise me something," he whispered. "If I fall, you take them and run. Find the old healer in the northern woods. She owes me a life." Ilara shook her head fiercely. "I'm not running from you." He cupped her face gently. "Please, Ilara. Promise." Her voice broke. "I promise." Kale kissed her once, fierce, desperate, final, and then he was gone, leaving behind the scent of pine and steel. The next morning dawned blood-red. From the castle walls, Ilara watched Kale's army move like a dark tide through the forest, banners snapping in the wind. The pups stood beside her, silent and solemn. Ash spoke first. "He'll win. He always does." Ilara forced a smile. "Yes. He will." But deep in her chest, fear coiled like smoke. The first battle report arrived by sunset. The messenger's face was pale, his uniform torn. "The Alpha's forces engaged Ravik near the river Vale," he said breathlessly. "They held the line at first, but the rogues fight like demons." Ilara's stomach turned. "Kale?" "He lives," the soldier said quickly. "But he's outnumbered." That night, Ilara barely slept. She paced the halls, every creak of the floorboards echoing like footsteps of fate. The pups lay huddled together in her room for safety, their small bodies curled close for warmth. When dawn broke, she went to the temple, lighting candles for every soldier in Kale's army. She whispered silent prayers until her voice gave out. Hours later, another rider arrived, Darius this time, covered in mud and blood. Ilara ran to him before he even dismounted. "Where is he?" she cried. "Tell me he's alive." Darius gripped her shoulders. "He's alive. But wounded." Her knees nearly buckled. "Take me to him." "You can't." "Take me," she said again, voice trembling with power that left no room for argument. The battlefield stretched for miles, charred earth, broken trees, and the smell of iron thick in the air. Ilara had seen blood before, but never like this. Wolves lay where they had fallen, their bodies shrouded in torn banners. The sky was grey and heavy, as if mourning them. Darius led her through the wreckage to a small ridge overlooking the river. There, Kale sat slumped against a boulder, his armor dented and soaked in crimson. He was alive, but barely. "Kale," she whispered, running to him. He looked up, eyes dull but still burning silver. "I told you to stay in the stronghold." She knelt beside him, hands trembling as she touched his face. "And you told me you'd come back. We're both liars." A faint, pained smile tugged at his lips. "Fair point." Ilara worked quickly, tearing fabric to bind his wounds. "Where are the healers?" "Dead or scattered," Darius said quietly. "The rogues hit from both sides. We barely held them." Ilara's heart pounded. "Then we'll find survivors. We'll regroup." Kale caught her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "Listen to me. Ravik is still out there. He's retreating now, but he'll strike again. You have to get the pups out. I'm not leaving you." "Ilara." "No," she snapped, her eyes blazing. "I won't lose you, Kale. I can't." For a moment, the Alpha King looked at her not as his Luna, but as the only thing holding him to this world. "Then you'd better save me fast," he murmured. She pressed her hands to his wounds, calling on every ounce of healing skill she possessed. Warmth spread beneath her palms, faint light flickering as her bond with him pulsed. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please, Kale. Stay." He groaned, his head falling back. The color began to return to his face, faint but real. Darius exhaled, relief breaking his composure. "Moon bless you, Luna." But their moment of calm shattered with a sound like thunder. From the ridge below, a roar echoed through the valley, a challenge, primal and furious. Alpha Ravik emerged from the smoke, his armor blackened, his eyes wild with rage. "So," he snarled. "The mighty Alpha King bleeds after all." Ilara rose, standing between them. "Haven't you destroyed enough?" Ravik sneered. "You should thank me, human. When he's dead, I'll end his curse and put those mongrel pups out of their misery." Kale's voice was weak but defiant. "Touch them, and I'll haunt you until your last breath." Ravik drew his sword. "Then die trying." He charged. Ilara's scream tore through the air. Kale moved faster than he should have been able to, steel meeting steel with a thunderous crash. Sparks flew. Blood spattered the ground. The two alphas fought with everything left in them, raw power colliding again and again. Ravik struck hard, driving Kale back. "You fight for weakness," he spat. "4 half-bloods and humans." Kale's blade locked with his. "I fight for what you'll never understand, love." With a roar, Kale drove his sword through Ravik's chest. The rival alpha staggered, shock flashing in his eyes before he crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The field fell silent. Kale swayed, blood dripping from his side. Ilara caught him as he fell to his knees. "Kale. No, no, stay with me." He smiled faintly, brushing her cheek with shaking fingers. "It's done. It's finally done." Tears streamed down her face. "Don't you dare leave me." "I'm tired, Ilara," he whispered. "But you have to go home. Lead them." "I'm not the leader." "You are." He met her gaze, eyes softening. "You always were. I just followed." Then his hand fell away. "No," she screamed, pressing against his chest, willing his heart to beat. "Kale, please." The wind howled through the valley. For a moment, Even the world seemed to hold its breath. Then a faint thump. Ilara froze. Another. Then another. His heartbeat returned, faint but steady. Her tears turned to laughter as she cradled him against her. "You stubborn man," she whispered. "Even death can't handle you." Darius fell to his knees beside them, relief flooding his face. "The battle's over. Ravik's forces are scattering." Ilara nodded through her tears. "Then we won." Kale groaned softly, eyes fluttering open. "No. You won." She kissed his forehead. "We both did." By nightfall, the surviving warriors returned to Silver Fang, bearing both victory and grief. The pups waited by the gates, their eyes wide with hope. When they saw Kale carried in on a stretcher, they ran forward. Ash grabbed his hand. "You came back." Kale smiled weakly. "Didn't I promise?" Ilara knelt beside them, exhaustion and joy mixing in her chest. He kept his word. The pack gathered around, silent and awed. For the first time, they saw not a human Luna or a broken Alpha, but two souls who had fought not for power but for peace. That night, when the castle finally quieted, Ilara sat beside Kale's bed. His breathing was even, his hand warm in hers. Outside, the moon shone bright and full, bathing the kingdom in silver light. Ash peeked in through the door. "Luna?" "Yes, sweetheart." He smiled sleepily. "We told the others you beat the bad wolves." Ilara laughed softly. "Did we?" "Yeah," he said proudly. "Because you and the Alpha always win." She brushed his hair back. "Go to bed, Ash. Tomorrow's a new beginning." As he left, she turned back to Kale, her voice barely a whisper. "You kept your promise. Now it's my turn." She leaned close, pressing her lips to his ear. "I'll protect them all. Until the end." And under the light of the reborn moon, Silver Fang finally slept in peace for now. The world was quiet when Kale opened his eyes. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. The air smelled of herbs and firewood. The ceiling above him was familiar, the carved beams of his own chamber. A faint light filtered through the curtains, warm and golden. His body ached with every breath, but the pain meant one thing: he was alive. He turned his head and saw Ilara, fast asleep in the chair beside his bed. Her hair was tangled, her face pale from sleepless nights. She still wore the same dress from the battlefield, now stained and frayed at the edges. Her hand was on his chest, as though she'd been guarding his heartbeat all night. Kale's throat tightened. He reached out weakly, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Ilara," he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. For a second, she stared at him as if unsure he was real. Then she gasped, covering her mouth. "Kale." He smiled faintly. "You look worse than me." She let out a shaky laugh that turned into a sob. "You idiot, you almost died." He tried to sit up, but she pushed him back down. "Don't you dare move. You lost so much blood, Kale, I thought." Her voice cracked, and she buried her face in his shoulder. "I thought I'd lost you." He wrapped his good arm around her, his fingers trembling. "You'll never lose me," he said softly. "Not even the moon goddess could drag me away from you." For a long time, they stayed like that, two souls that had fought and bled and somehow survived. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were wet but shining. "The healers say your recovery will take weeks," she said. "You're not to leave this bed." Kale gave her a mock scowl. "You expect me to lie still while there's a kingdom to run?" "Yes," she said firmly. "For once in your life, do as you're told." He chuckled, wincing as pain lanced through his side. "You've gotten bold, Luna." "I had to," she said. "Someone had to keep this place from falling apart." He arched an eyebrow. "You did that." Her lips quirked into a small, proud smile. "With help." Darius kept the warriors in line. The pups helped feed the healers. "The people, they've changed, Kale. They don't look at me the same anymore." He frowned slightly. "How do you mean?" "They bow," she said quietly. "Not because I'm your Luna, but because they respect me." Kale's heart swelled. "You've earned that and more." The next few days passed in a strange rhythm. Kale recovered slowly, his strength returning piece by piece. The pups visited daily, each bringing something small: a flower, a carved stone, a loaf of bread that Ember insisted she baked herself. Ash was the quietest of them. He sat by Kale's bedside, listening intently as the Alpha told stories of past battles and the wolves who'd come before them. "Will I ever be as strong as you?" Ash asked one evening. Kale smiled. "You already are." Ash frowned. "I'm just a kid." "Strength isn't about size or scars," Kale said. "It's about heart. You protected your family when no one else could. That makes you stronger than most warriors I've met." Ash blushed, looking down at his hands. "You really think so?" Kale nodded. "I know so." When Ash left, Elara appeared in the doorway, her smile soft. "You're good with them." He shrugged. "They remind me of us." Her brow furrowed. Us. Two souls who shouldn't have survived, but did anyway. That evening, Elara joined him by the fire, both wrapped in a shared blanket. Outside, snow fell softly, blanketing the land in peace. For the first time in years, there were no battle drums, no alarms, no cries of war, only quiet. "What now?" she asked. "Now that Ravik's gone?" Kale thought for a long moment. "Now, we rebuild. Not just walls or borders, but hearts. The pack's still divided. Some still see the pups as a threat." She looked into the fire. "And you?" He turned to her, his gaze steady. "I see them as the future. And I see you as the reason we still have one." Elara smiled faintly, resting her head on his shoulder. "Then maybe peace isn't a dream anymore." "Peace," he murmured, "is what you've already built." By the end of the week, Kale was walking again, though Elara hovered like a hawk every time he took a step. Together, they ventured into the courtyard, where the snow had begun to melt into thin rivulets of water. The pups were there, building misshapen snow wolves, their laughter echoing through the stone walls. When the pack saw Kale, they fell silent. Warriors, hunters, even the council turned to look. The Ran, the elder, approached cautiously. "Alpha, we heard you'd fallen." Kale's voice was quiet but firm. "I rose again." The elder bowed deeply. "The goddess must favor you." "No," Kale said. "She favors those who fight for what's right. And it was my Luna's courage that saved us all." The crowd murmured. Elara flushed, ducking her head, but Kale's hand found hers and held it high. This woman stood against fate itself. She fought when even alphas faltered. Remember her face, for it belongs to the Luna who ended a war. A roar of approval filled the courtyard. For the first time, there were no whispers, no hesitation, only pride and unity. Elara's eyes filled with tears as she looked up at Kale. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. He smiled softly. "Yes, I did." Spring came early that year. The snow melted from the mountains, and the river that had once run red now sparkled clear under the sunlight. The Silverfang lands were blooming again, wildflowers spreading where ashes had fallen. The pups grew stronger each day, their laughter a daily melody through the halls. Ember had taken to following Elara everywhere, while Ash had started training with Darius, his movements sharp and focused. He was no longer the frightened pup from the ruins, he carried himself like a young warrior. Elara spent her mornings in the healer's wing and her afternoons walking the villages, tending to the wounded and planting herbs. Everywhere she went, wolves greeted her warmly, offering gifts of bread, pelts, and flowers. The woman who had once been called outsider was now the heart of Silverfang. One afternoon, as she returned from the fields, Kale met her at the gates. His hair gleamed in the sun, his armor polished but relaxed. There was a calmness to him she hadn't seen before. "You've been busy," he said, offering her a smile. "So have you," she replied. "The warriors say you're training them to rebuild rather than fight." He nodded. "We'll always defend our home. But I don't want another generation raised on blood. It ends with us." She touched his hand gently. "Then maybe we finally did it, Kale. We broke the cycle." His gaze softened. "Maybe we did." That night, a celebration was held, the first true feast since the war ended. The great hall was draped with banners, the tables overflowing with food. Music filled the air, and the pups danced clumsily with the warriors, their laughter contagious. Elara sat beside Kale at the head table, watching it all with quiet joy. They look happy, she said. They are, Kale replied. And so am I. For the first time in a long while, she saw the boy beneath the warrior, the dreamer who wanted a world worth protecting. As the night deepened, Kale stood, raising his goblet. To those we lost, he said, and the hall fell silent. To those who fought. And to the ones who showed us a new way. He looked at Ilara. To the Luna who taught the Alpha to heal. The crowd erupted in cheers. Ilara blushed fiercely, hiding her face in her hands, but Kale just laughed and pulled her close. Get used to it, he whispered. You're their hero now. I never wanted to be, she murmured. He kissed her cheek. That's why you are. Later, after the feast ended and the fires burned low, Kale and Ilara walked outside together. The sky was clear, the stars glittering like diamonds. In the distance, the pups were still awake, chasing fireflies near the edge of the woods. They never tire, Ilara said, smiling. Neither do you, Kale replied. She laughed softly. That's not true. I'm exhausted. He chuckled, wrapping his arms around her. Then rest. For once, the world can wait. They stood together in silence for a while, the cool breeze brushing past them. Then Kale tilted his head toward the horizon. Do you hear that? She frowned. Hear what? He smiled. The quiet. She listened and realized he was right. No drums, no howls of war, no cries of loss. Just the gentle hum of peace. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's you, he said. She looked up at him. Me? You were the quiet before the storm, he said softly. And now you're the calm after it. Her heart swelled. Kale. He pressed his forehead against hers. You gave me a reason to stop fighting. Now I'll spend the rest of my life protecting what you built. I don't need protecting, she teased. He smiled. No. But I'll do it anyway. The next morning, the first light of dawn painted the mountains gold. The entire pack gathered in the courtyard for the annual spring howl, a tradition meant to honor renewal and rebirth. This time, Kale and Ilara stood at the center, surrounded by wolves of every rank. The pups were beside them, each holding a small torch. Kale raised his voice. Today, we begin again. Not as separate packs, not as enemies, but as one family. From this day forward, Silverfang stands for life, not death. He turned to Ilara. Luna. She stepped forward, her voice ringing clear and strong. The moon goddess watches us tonight. Let her see that love triumphed where hate once ruled. Let her see that we humans and wolves alike can heal what was broken. She nodded to Ash. Light the flame. The boy stepped forward and touched his torch to the great bonfire in the center. Flames burst upward, golden and fierce. The wolves threw back their heads and howled, one united sound that rolled across the valley like thunder. Kale took Ilara's hand, lifting it high. Together, he shouted, We are the dawn. The pack echoed him in one voice. We are the dawn. The howl rose higher and higher, echoing through the mountains until it felt like even the stars were listening. And for the first time, there was no fear in the sound, only hope. When the fire burned low and the howls faded into laughter, Ilara stood watching the horizon. Kale came up behind her, wrapping his cloak around her shoulders. What are you thinking? He asked. She smiled softly. That this is what home feels like. He kissed the crown of her head. Then we finally found it. She looked up at him. Do you think it'll last? Kale's eyes reflected the firelight, steady, certain. As long as we keep choosing peace, every single day. She leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his heartbeat under her cheek. The night sky shimmered above, vast and endless. And in that moment, the Alpha King and his human Luna stood together beneath the stars, knowing that though battles may come again, they had built something that would outlast even the strongest storms. A kingdom healed. A love reborn. And a dawn that would never fade. If you felt every heartbeat of this story, if it pulled you in and made you believe in strength, love, and redemption, then don't just scroll away. Hit that like button to show Ilara and Kale some love. Drop a comment below what part of their story hit you the hardest. And if you want more stories that make your heart race and your soul ache in the best way, subscribe, turn on notifications, and join me for the next chapter. Because trust me, the world of the alphas is just getting started.